In April 1945, American soldiers from the 6th Armored Division walked through the gates of Buchenwald concentration camp. These were combat veterans, men who had stormed beaches, fought through hedgerows, watched their brothers die in the mud. They had seen the absolute worst that war had to offer, but nothing prepared them for what they found inside that camp. A lampshade, a book cover, a pair of gloves, all made from human skin. A pathologist assigned by General Eisenhower himself examined the lampshade. His official report, dated April 28, 1945, stated in cold clinical language, "The material composition is human skin, preserved through a process consistent with standard tanning procedures." The soldiers stood in silence. Some wept, some turned away, some simply could not speak. And the woman responsible? She was already gone, back to civilian life, playing the role of a loyal housewife and devoted mother. Her name was Ilse Koch. The prisoners of Buchenwald called her something else entirely. They called her the Witch. If you're new to this channel, welcome to WW2 Historians, where we dig into the stories that textbooks are too afraid to tell. Hit that subscribe button right now because what you're about to hear is one of the darkest, most disturbing chapters of World War II, and it deserves to be remembered. Every brutal, documented detail of it. Ilse Koch was not born a monster. She was born Margaret Ilse Köhler on September 22, 1906, in Dresden, Germany, the third daughter of a factory foreman. She attended public school, earned a commercial certificate, and then spent her 20s working as a secretary and bookkeeping clerk for various German companies. Ordinary, unremarkable, invisible. Then Adolf Hitler rose to power, and something inside Ilse Koch woke up. She joined the Nazi Party in 1932, a full year before Hitler was even appointed chancellor. She wasn't dragged in. She wasn't pressured. She walked in voluntarily, and in the Nazi movement, Ilse found exactly what she had been looking for: power, status, and permission to be something far worse than ordinary. In 1936, she married Karl Otto Koch, a rising SS officer who had just been appointed commandant of Sachsenhausen concentration camp near Berlin. At Sachsenhausen, Ilse worked directly inside the camp as a guard and secretary. By the time the camp held over 1,600 prisoners that year, she had already begun to earn a reputation. And not for diligence, not for discipline, for cruelty. In August 1937, Karl Koch was promoted and given a far larger assignment: to construct and command a brand new camp called Buchenwald, carved out of the Ettersberg Hills just outside the city of Weimar. Weimar, the same city that had once been the cultural heart of Germany, the home of Goethe and Schiller. Now it would be forever shadowed by barbed wire and smoke. Buchenwald became one of the largest concentration camps on German soil. At its peak, it held tens of thousands of prisoners, political opponents, Jews, Jehovah's Witnesses, Soviet POWs, Sinti and Roma, surrounded by electrified fencing, watchtowers, and armed sentries with automatic weapons. At the entrance stood the notorious bunker, on a punishment block where prisoners who violated regulations were tortured and frequently beaten to death. Ilse Koch moved into the commandant's villa just outside the camp gates, and she made herself at home. She rode her horse daily along the camp perimeter, dressed in tailored SS riding clothes, scanning the rows of emaciated prisoners with sharp, searching eyes. She wasn't looking for escape attempts. She wasn't monitoring security. She was looking at tattoos. Prisoners at Buchenwald quickly learned that a tattoo on your body was a death sentence if Ilse Koch noticed it. She became obsessed, fixated in a way that went far beyond cruelty into something deeply disturbed. When she found a prisoner with a tattoo she found interesting, she reported them to camp doctors. The prisoner would be killed, and before the body was cremated, the tattooed section of skin would be carefully removed, tanned, and preserved, turned into an artifact for Ilse Koch's personal collection. Lampshades, book covers, knife sheaths, a briefcase, gloves. She called these pieces of human skin her trophies. At her 1950 trial, a witness named Ackerman testified under oath that a lamp, its foot made from a human leg bone and shin bone, its shade decorated with visible tattoos and even a nipple, was delivered to the Kochs villa as a birthday gift for Ilse in August 1941. He testified that when it was presented at the party, it was a huge success. 5 additional witnesses at trial confirmed they had personally seen or handled human skin artifacts in Ilse Koch's possession. She shared her morbid fascination with Dr. Erich Wagner, the camp physician and allegedly her lover, who was conducting pseudoscientific research into whether tattoos were connected to criminal behavior. Wagner used Buchenwald prisoners as subjects. He used their bodies as raw material. But Koch's sadism did not stop at collecting. Survivors testified that she beat prisoners with a riding crop, a crop with razor blades woven into it. She beat pregnant women. She beat children. Eyewitnesses described how she would walk through the camp in provocative clothing, deliberately trying to catch a prisoner's eye. If any prisoner dared look at her, she would call the guards over. The sentence was 25 lashes of the whip, or worse, a bullet. She was not a bystander. She was not passively complicit. She was an active, enthusiastic participant in Buchenwald's machinery of death. In 1941, cracks began to appear. Not because the Nazis finally developed a conscience, but because Ilse and Karl Koch had made a critical mistake. They had stolen too much. SS General Josias Waldeck, who held supervisory authority over Buchenwald, was reviewing the camp's death records when he noticed the name of Walter Kramer, a senior hospital orderly who had personally treated Waldeck in the past. Waldeck ordered an investigation. What investigators uncovered was staggering. Karl Koch had ordered Kramer killed, along with several other prisoners, not for any camp violation, but because they had treated him for syphilis. Koch was terrified that evidence of the disease would destroy his reputation inside the SS. To silence the witnesses, he had them shot and listed as escape attempts or political prisoners. The investigation deepened. Evidence emerged that the Kochs had been systematically looting the camp, stealing money, jewelry, and valuables confiscated from prisoners. Karl Koch had used over 250,000 Reichsmarks of stolen funds to build a private indoor riding arena for himself and Ilse. He had bought a luxury car. He had opened secret Swiss bank accounts. Ilse was personally accused of embezzling over 700,000 Reichsmarks. In the warped moral universe of the SS, you could murder prisoners, you could torture them, you could conduct experiments on them, but you could not steal from the Reich. Karl Otto Koch was arrested, tried by an SS court, found guilty, and executed by firing squad on April 5, 1945, in the yard of the very camp he had once commanded. Ilse was acquitted at the internal SS trial due to insufficient evidence. She walked free. In less than 2 weeks later, the world came knocking. On April 8, 1945, a group of Buchenwald prisoners, starving, barely able to stand, gathered around a hidden shortwave radio transmitter they had secretly built and concealed inside the camp. With trembling hands, they tapped out a Morse code message. To the Allies, to the army of General Patton. This is Buchenwald, SOS. We request help. The SS want to destroy us. 3 minutes later, the reply came back. Hold out, rushing to your aid. Staff of 3rd Army. 3 days later, on April 11, 1945, soldiers of the U.S. 6th Armored Division broke through the gates. They found 21,000 survivors, skeletal, hollow-eyed, many too weak to walk. And they survived partly because of remarkable courage. When the Gestapo telephoned the camp to say they were sending explosives to destroy all evidence, including the prisoners, a prisoner who had answered the phone calmly told them it wouldn't be necessary because the camp had already been destroyed. It was a lie, but it bought enough time. General Patton toured Buchenwald personally. Hardened combat officer that he was, accounts suggest he was physically sickened by what he saw. He ordered the mayor of Weimar to bring 1,000 German civilians to the camp to see it for themselves. The crematoriums, the emaciated survivors behind wire, the table displaying paintings on human skin, the lampshade, the preserved body parts, and 2 human heads shrunk to 1/5 their normal size. Many of those German civilians wept. Some fainted. Some could not look at all. Ilse Koch was arrested by U.S. authorities on June 30, 1945. She had been living in Ludwigsburg with her family, slipping back into domesticity as if Buchenwald had never happened. The Buchenwald trial opened on April 11th, 1947, exactly 2 years after the camp's liberation. Out of 31 defendants seated in that courtroom, Ilse Koch was the only woman. Journalists packed the gallery, the American public, still processing the horror of what the liberation footage had shown them, watched closely. Koch denied everything. She had known nothing about the abuse, nothing about the starvation, nothing about the medical experiments, nothing about the human skin. The eyewitnesses told a very different story. On August 14th, 1947, the sentences were handed down. 22 of Koch's 30 co-defendants received the death penalty. Koch herself was sentenced to life imprisonment, a sentence some attributed to the fact that she was visibly pregnant at the time of sentencing. Her son Uwe was born in October 1947, conceived while she was in American custody. His father was another German prisoner. Then came a decision that caused international outrage. In 1948, General Lucius D. Clay, the American military governor of the occupied zone, reviewed Koch's case and reduced her sentence to 4 years, stating there was no convincing evidence she had possessed human skin artifacts. The public reaction was explosive. American veterans were furious. Holocaust survivors were devastated. Congressional hearings were held. Under mounting pressure, German authorities immediately moved to retry her. The second trial opened in Augsburg on November 27, 1950. It lasted 7 weeks. 250 witnesses testified, including 50 called by the defense. At least 4 prosecution witnesses stated under oath that they had personally watched Koch select tattooed prisoners who were then killed, or had directly participated in the process of creating the human skin artifacts. Koch collapsed twice during the proceedings, once in December 1950 and again in January 1951, and had to be physically carried from the courtroom. On January 15, 1951, the Augsburg court delivered a 111-page verdict sentencing Ilse Koch to life imprisonment. The court's written judgment was devastating in its language. When it stated that Koch's crimes were especially egregious because she consciously suppressed any feeling of compassion and pity she had as a woman, and instead gave free rein to her pursuit of power, arrogance, and selfishness. She was not present in court to hear it. Every petition for pardon Ilse Koch submitted to the Bavarian Ministry of Justice was rejected. In 1967, her eldest son Artwin, the child of Karl and Ilse Koch, took his own life, unable to carry the weight of his parents' legacy. He was not the only one breaking. Inside Eichach prison in Bavaria, Ilse Koch had been deteriorating for years. She suffered from delusions, convinced that concentration camp survivors were watching her through her cell walls. She claimed to prison staff, to anyone who would listen, that the dead prisoners of Buchenwald came through the walls at night, demanding the return of their skin. Whether that was madness or conscience, history cannot say. On September 1, 1967, Ilse Koch tore her bed sheet into a rope, tied it to a fixture in her cell, and hanged herself. She was 60 years old. She left a note behind. It read simply, "Death is a release for me. There is no other way." She was buried in an unmarked grave. There were no flowers, no mourners, no tears shed for the witch of Buchenwald. Over 56,000 documented deaths occurred at Buchenwald concentration camp. 56,000 names, stories, and faces, reduced by one woman's cruelty to raw material for her trophies. History does not forget them, and neither should we. And if this story shook you, if it made you feel something, that's exactly why we tell it. Because the moment we stop talking about what happened in those camps, we start the slow process of forgetting, and forgetting is how it happens again. Subscribe to WW2 Historians right now. Hit the notification bell. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it, and drop a comment below. What part of this story hit you hardest? We'll see you in the next one. Stay curious. Stay vigilant. Never forget.